Hey, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? What's happening? This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. So today I'm going to be dealing with the topic about Ethel L. Payne. All right. So Ethel L. Payne was an African American journalist, and she was from Chicago. So this month, March is Women History Month. Okay. So I'm doing the best I can to make sure that I honor the women, especially women within our community in the African and African diaspora who has made a difference, who has made a contribution. All right. So with that being said, I'm going ahead and get started. But make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, share the channel. All right. And shout out to all the new subscribers on there. Hopefully you guys get a chance to look at my videos. Some are There are good ones. Then there are the ones where I have my rants. And then there are the ones that I just deal with history and have general thoughts. Okay. So you guys just check out the videos for yourself. Okay. Anyways, let me go ahead and get started. So Ethel L. Payne was an African American journalist straight out of Chicago. She was one of the first African American women to get involved into journalism. And she was a very powerful voice during her time period, during her tenure. She opened up a lot of doors of opportunity for many black women to get involved in journalism. Okay. All right. So journalism happened to be one of my favorite subjects that I wanted to get into in college because I used to love writing so much. But I been on the writer block for a while, so I don't even do as much writing anymore. Anyways, so I have a new love, which is sociology, sociology and anthropology. That's my new love right there. But journalism happened to be one of my first love because I used to love writing all the time. So, but anywho, so I just want to go ahead and share some information about her. So I have books on her, and also I have articles that you guys can look for. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me get started on the article. Okay. So right here. So Ethel L. Payne, right? Now this comes from womenshistory.org, written by Ashley Anderson in 2018. That's a picture of her right here. You know, she looking all glamorous and looking all fancy. She got that nice fancy wig on and everything. But anyway, she was known as the first lady of the black press because of her fearlessness as a journalist and a civil rights activist. Throughout her career, she witnessed some of the United States' most monumental moments and wrote about them in Chicago Defender. She was the first African American woman to be included in the White House Press Corps and became a radio and television commentator, and she covered events including the Korean War, the Civil Rights Movement, and the Vietnam War. Ethel Payne broke barriers as a journalist and was known for asking questions about topics that other journalists did not want to approach. All right. So it said that she was born on August 14, 1911 to William A. Payne and Bessie Austin Payne on the south side of Chicago, Illinois. Her grandparents on her father's side were enslaved until the end of the Civil War. Her father worked as a Pullman porter, and her mother stayed at home to look after their 6 children. During her childhood, she was a voracious reader, especially the poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar. She attended Lindblom High School and had the same teacher as Ernest Hemingway. Unfortunately, Payne's father passed away when she was 12. To make money, her mother opened their home as a boarding house and became a Latin teacher. All right. So in 1948, Payne left Chicago to work in Japan for the Army Special Service Club. When the Korean War began in 1950, she wrote in her journal about the treatment of African American troops. Although President Truman had ordered the military to be integrated, General McCarthy refused to desegregate the troops. Payne wrote about the segregation of the soldiers, the racial slurs that were used against them, and about the babies that were abandoned as orphans because they were born to Japanese mothers and black fathers. Let's stop right there. Children being abandoned in Japan because they are born to Japanese mother and black fathers. Now, if that's not racism and segregation, then I don't know what you call that. Imagine as a Japanese parent or one of the Japanese parent, right? Your child has to be abandoned because they of not of Japanese origin. You know what I mean? They have a black parent. Imagine that. Imagine you as a child growing up choosing between your mother and your father because of different ethnicity and a different background. Imagine that. That's pretty rough on a child that happens to be biracial, right? That's pretty rough because you gotta choose between what side you're on. So sometimes I feel bad for people who are biracial only because they have to straddle the fence of what side they can be on and where they can go. And many of them choose to identify themselves as black because they connect themselves with the black struggle more than they connect with the other half of them. And that's okay. And we had a lot of biracial people who play a major role in the African American history alone. You know, as far as education, civil rights, even black nationalism, we had a lot of that. But let's go ahead and continue. Payne showed Korean War reporter Alice Wilson her diary, and after reading a few excerpts, he asked to send her notes to the Chicago Defender. The Chicago Defender was a newspaper for African American communities. Payne's article about the events in the Korean War gave a boost to newspaper circulation. However, she was also met with criticism. She was accused of upsetting the morale of the troops. Due to her honest and straightforward writing and style, her writing caught the attention of the editor in chief, who offered her a full-time position at the paper. She began writing for the Defender in 1951. Watch this. So during her time as a reporter for the Defender, Payne worked to present stories that were not discussed frequently. She focused on adoption crisis for African American children and the struggles unwed mother faced. In 1952, Payne moved to Washington, D.C. to cover historic events such as the Army McCarthy trial. She also covered the civil rights movement, which had grown over the 1950s and 1960s. During the civil rights movement, Payne recognized that desegregation would not happen unless some drastic action is taken to goad the lawmakers into action. All right. When the historic case Brown versus Board of Education ended segregation in public school, Payne pointed out that there was no set date for integration of school to happen. She was displeased at the thought that the desegregation could take years. Payne's ability to express these ideas in a clear way to the public made her an extraordinary reporter. All right. Let's see. Down here it says Ethel Payne was also the first African American woman to join the White House press corps as a correspondent for the Defender. Payne was able to ask President Eisenhower about his choices in regard to civil rights. So Payne asked President why he had not allowed the Howard University choir to perform during a celebration. And Eisenhower chose to say he did not know about the incident. So Payne continued to question him on immigration, segregation, and discrimination throughout the United States. So on July 7, 1954, shortly after Brown versus Board of Education was passed, Payne asked Mr. President, "We were very happy last week when the Deputy Attorney General sent a communication to the House Interstate and Foreign Commerce Committee said that there was a legal basis for passing a law to ban segregation in interstate travel." Okay. And it says, "I would like to know if we could assume that we have administration support in getting action on this. Eisenhower responded harshly, stating, "You say that you have to have administrative support. The administration is trying to do what it thinks and believes to be decent and just in this country, and is not in the effort to support any particular or special group or any kind." So this response by Eisenhower showed that he felt the African American community and their push to equal rights was nothing more than a special interest. After this exchange, both the black and white presses reported Eisenhower irritation with the question Payne had asked. Payne also experienced backlash. The president refused to call on her for the remainder of his presidency, and Press Secretary James Haggerty tried to invalidate her as a journalist. Haggerty went as far as to conduct an investigation on her, including looking through her income tax returns. See, now imagine. See, as a black woman, you interrogating the president so much, especially when it comes to your own group, the African American people, right? When you do that type of interrogation, that's sent off a red flag. So what they was trying to do at that time period, according to that article, they wanted to blackball her. They want to blackball her because she was asking controversial questions. Nowadays, you can't be too controversial because you have a thing called the cancel culture. The cancel culture is where people will cancel you out. And you don't even have to worry about the press doing it. It's the people that get on social media that will be quick to cancel you out. Because of the fact that they were influenced by media. Because of the fact that media has so much control over us and how we think, it called these things, right, based on how things are fabricated and how it's being worded, it will make us get into our feelings and cause us to want to hashtag cancel culture, cancel such and such, cancel this person because person said this, they, and other that is deemed offensive. And a lot of times it's not always offensive. It's not always offensive. It's just something that they give opinion to. But because nowadays, this generation that we in, they're very sensitive and you're not entitled to have a lot of opinion. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get shut down. And you can't even say certain words. Do you notice that social media algorithm has changed a lot of things? You can't even say certain words that is not even considered as a cuss word, but because it's so sensitive, you're not even allowed to say them. Or you have to be mindful of what you say because you will get shut down. So that would ask. That's when you start to question, well, where is the freedom of speech at? Does freedom of speech actually exist? Does it exist at all? Is there a limitation on it? Because I know back in the day when I was coming up, boy, people was able to say what they want. Nowadays, because we deal with a generation, a bunch of little sensitive ass little fuckers out here, excuse my language, a bunch of sensitive ass people, right? Now you can't say this, you can't say that. You know, it's a bunch of bullshit. I'm just gonna be straight up about that. But anyways, she was one of those journalists that was not afraid to ask those tough questions. And if she had to ask them, she will. All right. All right. Anyways, so regardless of the backlash, Payne continued to work to bring more awareness to the civil rights movement. She reported on Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott, and she interviewed Martin Luther King Jr. before he made national headlines. She also traveled to the South to write the series South at the Crossroads, an analysis of the South during the civil rights movement. Although she was present and reporting on historic moments, Payne and the defendant was unknown to the white audience. Okay. Payne also traveled overseas to report on international affairs. She was present for the Asian African Summit in Bandung, Indonesia, the meeting between Vice President Nixon and the King of Ghana, as well as covering the Vietnam War. Payne witnessed the horrors of the war after watching a Vietnamese woman die from exposure to Agent Orange. Wow. In the 1970s, Ethel Payne broke another barrier and became the first African American woman to appear on a national network as a radio and television commentator. She worked for CBS from 1972 to 1982. In 1978, she left the Defenders, but went on to serve as a professor for the School of Journalism at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, for 1 year. She also continued writing and advocating for the release of Nelson Mandela. All right, so Ethel Payne passed away from a heart attack on May 28th of 1991. She is remembered for her straightforward writing style and her forceful questioning. She broke barriers as an African American woman reporting on historic events. Unfortunately, Payne's legacy is not well known, and according to Washington Post, had Ethel Payne not been black, she certainly would have been one of the most recognized journalists in American society. Today, her legacy is being brought to the forefront through new biographies, articles written about her and her incredible career. All right, so again, you guys can check out this information from womenshistory.org, which is the National Women's History Museum. All right. So that was a very powerful information. And people like her who is very fierce, they're not going to get recognition. They'll do the best they can to make sure not too many of us get our recognition as black folks. They don't want you to get too recognized for anything. So here on the Smithsonian Magazine website, right? So for those of you that don't know anything about Smithsonian, you guys need to check them out. That's a great article, a great website to get on. It talks about, deals with a lot on history and science. I promise you that. One of the best articles, one of the best websites to get on. Okay. So right here in SmithsonianMag.com, right? And it says pioneer journalist Ethel Payne wasn't afraid to stand out. All right. So written by Kobe Bacolo, which is the February 2023. So it was recently this was written. Her hat turned heads, but it was her work as a reporter that changed the nation. All right. So this was one of the hats she wore. Okay. All right, this little flowery hat, this little southern looking hat, something that you would see southern folks wear in the South, or you might see your grandmama wear in the church. Anyways, at a press conference in 1954, of course, it go back talk about it goes in and talk about the conversation she had with Dwight Eisenhower, President Dwight Eisenhower. All right. Let's see what else we can find in this article. All right, here he is. So it says, while Payne had been an avid reader since early childhood, she struggled at Limbaugh except in English. She thrived under Dixon, who once told her student that her handwriting was resembling of another pupil I used to have when I taught in Oak Park, a coy reference to Hemingway. For Payne, it was unforgettable validation of her abilities. After graduating in 1930, Payne knew she wanted to be an advocate for downtrodden. I had strong, deeply embedded hatreds of bullies. Payne once said, I just felt if you're strong, you had no right to pick on weak people. So while studying English and history at community college and working as an assistant at the Chicago Public Library, Payne pursued activism at the local branch of the NAACP and organized community programs at her church to reduce juvenile delinquency. She continued to work on short fiction that borrowed heavily from her own life experiences. She, I think, really wanted to be a novelist, but that didn't work out, said Jennifer Sick, a collection researcher who oversees the Payne archive at the Smithsonian and a Costa Community Museum. All right. All right. So it said that Payne, ever the activist, helped organize the city contingent for a march on Washington in 1941. Leader A. Philip Randolph hoped the threat of a mass rally would compel the federal government to end segregation in the armed forces and address employment inequality for Black Americans. So, facing the specter of 100,000 people marching on the Capitol, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 80 802, which created the Fair Employment Practices Committee and banned the federal government and its defense contractors from discriminating based on race or religion, although segregation in the armed forces went in until 1948. In response, Randolph called off the march. All right. So it says, having grown frustrated in the mid 1940s, in part because she couldn't get into law school, Payne moved to Tokyo in 1948. Right. So she had moved to Japan, right, with the U.S. Army Special Services Club. Okay. So she spent 3 years there. All right. And then it goes on to say that the what it says. All right, it talks about Alice Wilson and how the two spent time at the local press club sharing their impression of experiences of Black soldier in Japan. So Wilson read Payne's Japan's diary and saw her talent. All right. So of course he helped her get a job at the Defender under the editor Lewis Martin, famous as the godfather of Black politics. So Martin assigned features to Payne and gave her latitude in style and story selection. Payne fell in love with the job and started producing vivid reports about racial disparity in Chicago across housing, healthcare, and hiring. A year later, in 1952, Payne wrote a series on the plight of Black orphans in the city. After the final installment, the city saw an increase in adoption application by Black citizens. All right, so Payne next headed to Washington, D.C., where she cemented her reputation as one of the most important journalists of the age. All right, so this is her right here. She's right here doing an interview with a soldier from Chesapeake, Virginia. Okay, this is her. Okay, so it goes on to say that Payne never paused long enough to marry, although she doesn't enjoy the same journalistic recognition today as Ida B. Wells say. Her legacy is perhaps no less great. Her work gained such notice that President Lyndon B. Johnson invited her to attend the signing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Payne went on to cover the Vietnam War, the Nigerian Civil War, and other conflicts for the Defender. This reporting vaulted her to CBS, right? So again, she had got the job in 1972, and she became the first Black woman to become the commentator on a national news network. All right. But anyways, in 1993, the National Association of Black Journalists established the Ethel Payne Fellowship to support Black Americans reporting from Africa. All right, so it says she had died in 1991, and she was also known for her fashionable hats and look she had adored since she was a young woman. Fancy hats, sometimes known as crowns, continue to hold special significance as an African American cultural tradition. Sick notes: one must be secure in one's self worth. To don the opposite of an invisibility cloak. So Payne should have acquired this one around 1960, made of silk and adorned with glass grapes and violets and roses in velveteen paper. The extravagant hat is quite heavy, something only a woman with nerve would wear. All right, so again, that's this article that pretty much goes into what I was reading from the previous article, but it's more information added on. All right. So you guys can check it out on Smithsonian.com. So Smithsonian Magazine has a lot of great information, and I think a lot of people need to look into this website and look into more information on anything that's historical or scientific. Yeah. All right. Let me see. I wrote an article on the 1955 Bandung Conference. Oh, you did? Wow. So, Norman, if you can go into, saying what the article was about, like what inspired you to write the article and what was it about? What was the purpose? Like what about the what was you doing it for? Was you doing it for a class or was it a job setting? What was it for? And what inspired you to write it? Okay, that's cool. See, we got somebody in here that know about the Bandung conference. I wish I can get you on here, Norman, but he knows something about that. Wow, that's great. That's great. That's powerful. Yeah, if you can elaborate that to me in writings, what made you decide to go into the details, or I mean, make what made you decide to write an article on this particular subject, right? And what was you doing it for? That'd be great. All right. Let's see. Yeah, now let's look at the awards that she has received. All right, so now let's go over here to Wikipedia. All right, so it says she has received the Newsman Award in 1954 and 1956. She has received the Chicago Council of Foreign Relations World Understanding Award in 1967, Newman's Award. In 1973, she had received the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Honorary Members Award. 1972, Fisk University Ida B. Well Distinguished Journalism Chair. In 1980, the National Association of Negro Business and Professional Women's Club named Woman of Action for Achievement in Journalism. In 1982, Johnson Publishing Company, or Gerardo Johnson William Award. So in 1982, National Association of Black Journalists Lifetime Achievement Award. 1988, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Candace Award. 1990, Hampton University Kappa 2 Alpha Award. All right, so she received some accolades for that. Okay. Um, let's see. Now, also, I have a book that I want to share with you guys. So if you guys want to get a chance to, you guys need to check out this book here. So this book is by James McGrath Morris. It's called Eye on the Struggle, Ethel Payne, the First Lady of Black Press. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. Now, you guys can check it out on archive.org. Archive.org is like an online library where you can check out books for an hour or 14 days or even a day, depending on what the book selection is. Okay. So again, it's like an online library. So I recommend people to check it out. All right. So right here, this is called Eyes on the Struggle. Ethel Payne, the First Lady of the Black Press. James McGrath Morris, that's the author of this book. All right. As you can see, she was very fashionable. Look at that hair. She had some nice wigs going on over here. You see how a wig look? See the earrings? She was a very fashionable lady. Okay. She took pride in herself. She took pride in her looks. All right. All right, then. So that's the book that I would recommend you guys to get if y'all want to find out more information. And also check out Darlene Clark Hine. Darlene Clark Hine is another one that you guys need to check out. She has written a lot of books about African American women and their tremendous work and different fields of studies they have done as far as like from literature, journalism, education, activism, law and government, politics, you name it. Arts, fine arts at that. The STEM, invention. I mean, she has written a lot of books. All right, as a matter of fact, I have one of her books here. Okay, so this book here is Black Women in America, Law and Government. Okay, and I have another one as well. but this is by Darlene Clark Hine. So if you guys want to learn more information about Black women in America and their contribution, check out this book right here. Okay. Check out, she has series of books based on the title of Black Women in America, but it's different categories. Okay. All right. So also let me show y'all real quick. Okay, so here's another book right here. All right. Black Women in America, Social Activism by Darlene Hine. So again, you guys will find a lot of great information in that book regarding to Black women. So if anybody say that, well, Black women, what has Black women contribute, or why haven't Black women contribute to anything in society? Well, just tell them that, hey, you didn't have, you read up on the information? Did you go look it up online? Do you have a book? Well, if you have not, then all you gotta do is type in the information about Black women in America or Black women history, and you will find plethora of books, plethora of articles, or you can go to historical sites. You can go to museums and find out what Black women have contributed to society, okay, and how they have made impacts, not only in America, but globally speaking. All right. So again, Black women do not get enough credit for a lot of things. Black women, we do not get enough credit for this. Okay. So when you hear so much about Black women, you'll hear the negativity of Black women. Not saying that Black women can't do anything wrong or do negative things, but that's all you basically hear when it comes down to Black women, is the negative aspect, or the negative side of their humanity, and not the positive side. So it should be a balance between the positivity and the negativity. Or when you hear about Black people in general, it's always something associated with negativity more than it is a positivity. Right? It's like our humanity has been downplayed. It has been thrown under the bus. All right, so let me see if I have any comments. Okay. Let me see if I got any comments on here. Let's see. I wrote it for Glenn Ford's Black Commentator, where 27 African and Asian countries met to fight against imperialism. Kwame Nkrumah was there. Wow. Wow, that was amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. I bet you got a lot of positive reviews on that. I bet people, and I'm quite sure there was some criticism regard to your article as well, but I'm quite sure people was impressed by your article too. That's just very interesting that I'm doing a video about this woman, right? And when I brought about the Bandung conference, you brought this information up. And you happen to be one of those people who have written articles about it. That's quite interesting. That's amazing. Hmm. All right. So for those who may want to know what is Bandung Conference, let's go into that. Let's all walk this together. Okay. Let's walk through this together. All right. So let's go ahead and see what this conference is about before I close it out. Oh, you got a great reaction? Wow. Hmm. Now let's look at who was Glenn Ford. Let's see, black commentator. All right. All right then. Well, let's go ahead. Let's look at what is the Bandung Conference and who was Glenn Ford since we're on the subject. So shout out to Brother Norman. I want to get on to that real quick before I close out. So Bandung Conference was an African Asian or Afro Asian conference, right? And it was a meeting of Asian and African states, most of which were newly independent, which took place on April the 18th to the 24th of 1955 in Bedon, West Java, Indonesia. The 29 countries that participate represented a total population of 1.5 billion people, 54% of the world's population. The conference was organized by Indonesia, Burma, India, uh, Selena, which is Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, and was coordinated by Rosalind Abdul Ghani, Secretary General of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia. All right. And say the conference stated aims were to promote Afro-Asiatic economic cultural cooperation and to oppose colonialism and neo-colonialism by any nation. So the conference was an important step towards the eventual creation of the non-aligned movement, yet the two initiatives ran in parallel during the 1960s, even coming in confrontation with one another prior to the second Cairo NAM conference in 1964. All right. In 2005, on the 50th anniversary of the original conference, leaders from Asian and African countries met in Jakarta. Was it Jakarta? Yeah, Jakarta and Bandung to launch the new Asian African strategic partnership. They pledged to promote political, economic, and cultural cooperation between the two continents. Wow, and that's very interesting. And see, it's funny, these things are not often talked about. They're not often talked about, okay? You're not going to hear anything about the Bedun conference or anything like that. I bet a lot of people don't even know about that, about the interaction between the African and Asian, countries trying to organize something that is going to be beneficial economically. But now today we see a new form of neo-colonialism taking place because it doesn't seem like it's benefiting both parties. It seems like one party is benefiting more than the other. So we see a new form of neo-colonialism that's going on right now. Let me see. Black Agenda Report. All right. So let's look up who Glenn Ford was. All right. So I want to pull up this information real fast. All right. So Glenn Ford, whose name was Glenn Rutherford, was an American journalist who was, along with Bruce Dixon and Margaret Kimberly, co-founded Black Agenda Report. He was a socialist, a Vietnam War era military veteran, and a member of the Black Panther Party. Wow. So he served in the news media over many years in his professional life. He was the Capitol Hill State Department and White House correspondent for the Mutual Black Network and American Radio Network. He co-launched, produced, and hosted the first nationally syndicated Black news interview program on commercial television, America's Black Forum, in 1977. Okay, wait a minute now. I want to know, is that the same guy that had the program where maybe, and I could be wrong, Norman. Just help me out. Is this the same program where Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin was on, where they had their interview? They was communicate with each other, talking about black relationships and issues and all that. Now I could be wrong, but it sounds like that's the same program that Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin was on, or maybe not. William F. Williams always talk about this event. James Brown gave him the name. Okay, okay, cool. Shout out to James Brown for that. Let me see. Oh no, that's not him. That's not him. That's somebody else. Okay. Okay, that's somebody else. Okay, my bad. Nah, that's somebody different. Okay, because I thought this was the same guy where James Baldwin and Nikki Giovanni was on his platform. They was doing the interview. That's somebody else. All right. So he passed away in 2021. Wow. Hmm. Okay. All right. No, it wasn't Tony Brown. No, it wasn't on the Tony Brown show. It was another show. Let me look up the name of that show. Let me see. The show with Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin. Hold on. Let me find the name of the show. Okay. It was called Soul 1971. That was the name of the show. It was called Soul 1971. Yeah, that was the name of the show, Soul. Uh-huh. Yeah, that was the name of the show. I had got it wrong. It wasn't Tony Brown. It was Soul. That was the name of Soul. It was the one where those two was on there. Um, I had thought it was, yeah. When you said Black Agenda Report, I thought, yeah, that's what they was on. But nah, that was somebody different. But okay, but yeah, I appreciate you giving me that information, though, sharing that information with me, brother Norman. I really do. All right, let me see if I have any more comments on here. Let me see if I got any more comments on here. So before I close out. Hmm. Nope. That's all. That's it. All right, then. Well, you guys have a good one. I really appreciate that. And shout out to those who've been watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell. And also, shout out to Brother Norman for sharing that information with me. I really appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much. All right. So I would have to get more into Glenn Ford and his life and his biography and whatnot. Okay. So one day I'm gonna have to get into doing a video about him and sharing some information and whatnot regarding to his legacy, what he has done, what type of work he has done for the community, etc. All right. So you put me on to something. I appreciate that. And I thank you so much for coming through. All right, so y'all take it easy. Until next time, peace and power, elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. And y'all be safe. All right, thank you.